My name is Evan, and my dream is to become an actor. Currently, I'm in the process of studying acting, but to support my education, I'm stuck with the most mundane job imaginable, delivering pizzas. It's not the most exciting gig, and it's a far cry from the world of acting I aspire to be part of. However, everything changed a few weeks ago during one of my shifts, which turned out to be the scariest experience of my life. It was an unusually slow Tuesday night, which is quite common in the pizza delivery business. That night, I had to venture into a part of town I had never visited before. The houses there were mostly dilapidated, creepy, and appeared to be abandoned. By the time I reached the delivery address, I was already feeling uneasy, and my nerves were getting the best of me. The entire area was shrouded in darkness. I approached the front door and knocked, patiently waiting for a response. However, no one answered. The order was for 3 pizzas with cash-on-delivery payment, and I couldn't afford to return empty-handed. My unsympathetic boss would likely blame me for the delay and deduct the money from my pay. I couldn't afford to let that happen, so leaving was not an option. I knocked again and attempted to call the cell phone number provided, but my efforts were met with silence. Frustration mounting, I decided to explore the property further. The backyard was enclosed by a locked fence, but there was a faint light visible at the back of the house. Desperation pushed me to make a bold move. I slid the pizza boxes under the fence and climbed over it. As I peered into a window, my eyes landed on something utterly strange and unsettling. Inside the seemingly abandoned house, I spotted 2 men. The interior was devoid of furnishings, contributing to the eerie atmosphere. One of the men was vigorously pounding a punching bag suspended from the ceiling, displaying an intimidating level of strength. The other was meticulously counting a pile of money, with 2 gym bags filled to the brim with cash resting nearby. Both men were heavily muscled, and their menacing appearances sent shivers down my spine. My mind raced as I struggled to comprehend the surreal scene unfolding before me. What had I stumbled upon? While I was absorbed in this bizarre spectacle, my cell phone suddenly buzzed, drawing my attention away. It was a call related to the pizza delivery. In a panic, I retreated to the front of the house before I could answer my phone, leaving behind the unsettling sight and the unsettling questions it raised. I had been witness to something I couldn't comprehend, and I was quite certain those men wouldn't have appreciated my intrusion. Upon returning to the front door, I anticipated one of the 2 men would answer, but to my surprise, it was a girl around my age who greeted me. She possessed a striking beauty, resembling a supermodel. Taking the pizzas from my hands, she closed the door behind her without making any payment. It took me a moment to realize that I hadn't been compensated for the delivery. I stood there feeling somewhat foolish before deciding to ring the doorbell again. I expected the attractive girl to answer once more, but this time, it was one of the men who opened the door. He stood at about 6 feet tall, with a formidable, muscular build and a demeanor that discouraged any confrontation. He extracted a bundle of bills from his pocket, counted them, and instructed me to keep the change before promptly shutting the door. Upon my return to the car, I overheard the man and the girl engaged in an argument. Despite my apprehensions, my curiosity got the better of me, compelling me to eavesdrop. I crept up to the door, pressing my ear against it in an attempt to discern their conversation. Regrettably, I couldn't make out any distinct words, but it appeared that the man was berating the girl for failing to keep watch at the door, as he expressed his desire for their activities to remain discreet. That night, I found sleep elusive, my thoughts dominated by the enigmatic events I had witnessed. I questioned the strangeness of it all. What had I stumbled upon? Were these individuals criminals? Was the house even theirs, or were they trespassers? And why was the attractive girl among them? Perhaps she was ensnared in a situation that demanded help. Driven by these concerns, I decided to contact my boss and share the events with him. He was less than pleased, understandably so since I had inadvertently awakened him in the middle of the night. Despite my misgivings, he discouraged me from involving the police, insisting that it was likely an innocent situation that merely appeared suspicious. My inability to sleep was a testament to the incessant thoughts swirling within me. Although the idea of making an anonymous call to the police crossed my mind, I ultimately opted to let the matter rest. I couldn't afford to jeopardize the reputation of our pizza delivery service by being perceived as a spy. The following night, my shift began routinely, and I was relieved that there was no delivery scheduled for the peculiar house. In fact, I managed to conclude my shift ahead of time. When I returned to the pizza place to hand over the earnings, my boss greeted me with a stack of pizza boxes and explained that a last-minute order had just come in, which required immediate attention. Naturally, you can surmise the address I was assigned to deliver to. It was the same Erie house. Although I felt a strong reluctance, I believed I had no alternative but to proceed. Upon my arrival, I knocked loudly on the door, only to discover that it wasn't properly closed, and it swung open by itself. I called out, but there was no response. Standing on the doorstep for a moment, fear took hold of me. Eventually, I acknowledged that I had no choice but to venture inside. The interior of the house was dimly lit, and the lack of furnishings struck me. My calls remained unanswered. An open door beckoned me into a room, and the sight that met my eyes was beyond belief. The room was replete with high-tech computer equipment, a stark contrast to the rest of the dilapidated house. It was utterly perplexing. Why would this room be so sophisticated while the remainder of the residence resembled a dump? The only plausible explanation was that these people were engaged in some form of criminal activity. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. Panic overcame me, prompting me to scurry and conceal myself in a dark corner of the room. The man entered the room and proceeded to close the front door, all the while berating the girl for leaving it open. She offered the excuse that she had believed it was the pizza delivery boy she had heard. In the midst of their heated argument, the man's anger flared as he questioned the girl's decision to order pizza after their close call the previous night. Their dispute revolved around her perceived failure to keep a vigilant watch over the house and its front door. Seizing the opportunity presented by their distraction, I took swift action. I dashed towards the window, pushing it open and unceremoniously dropping the pizzas, the clattering sound reverberating through the house. Just as the man entered the room, I scrambled out of the window and hastened back to my car, my fear palpable. I immediately called my boss, recounting the harrowing encounter, and to my surprise, he listened attentively. I informed him of my intention to contact the police, but he dissuaded me, insisting that he would handle it personally. He assured me that nothing untoward had transpired and offered an apology for the fright I had endured. He promised a full explanation when we met next. Although I felt relieved, I couldn't shake my sense of unease. The following day, I had a busy schedule with college classes that lasted the entire day, which helped distract me from dwelling on the incident. After concluding my academic responsibilities, I decided to stay late at the college to rehearse monologues. It was during this time that I received a voicemail from my boss. He informed me that the intimidating individual from the Erie house had visited the pizza place late the previous night and personally paid for the pizzas. He assured my manager that nothing unusual was transpiring and expressed his regret for having frightened me. He promised to provide a thorough explanation during our next meeting, leaving me feeling anxious and perplexed. As I left the college to return to my apartment, darkness had fallen, and an inexplicable sense of foreboding hung in the air. I began to hear footsteps trailing behind me. In a bid to evade my pursuer, I quickened my pace and darted around a corner. However, the footsteps persisted, growing faster and more ominous with each passing moment. Glancing behind me, I could discern the silhouette of the person following me in the dimly lit surroundings. Towering over 6 feet in height and of imposing stature, it was unmistakably one of the individuals from the sinister house. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my cell phone, attempting to call the police, but my heart sank as I realized that my phone had run out of battery. My desperate gaze darted around, finally alighting on an open coffee shop at the nearby street corner. I sprinted into the coffee shop and quickly sought refuge in a dimly lit corner, casting a cautious glance outside. From my vantage point, I observed the menacing figure wandering down the street, evidently disoriented by my sudden disappearance. After a brief moment, he abruptly departed, leaving me in bewilderment. What in the world was happening? My boss had insisted that the man was harmless, yet here he was, trailing me relentlessly. I decided to purchase a drink and took a seat, attempting to regain my composure. My foremost concern was returning home safely. As I sipped my beverage, someone occupied the seat opposite me. When I raised my gaze, I was met with the presence of the striking girl I had encountered at the enigmatic house. She held a cup of coffee and greeted me with a warm smile, introducing herself and offering an apology for the fright I had experienced. Suddenly, the two individuals I had identified as thugs from the house entered the coffee shop. An initial instinct to cry out for assistance was supplanted by a peculiar sense that something was amiss. They wore smiles on their faces and exhibited a friendly demeanor. Acquiring drinks, they seated themselves and expressed their intent to elucidate the situation. One of them produced a tablet and commenced displaying video clips from horror movies. Momentarily, I found myself bewildered, struggling to comprehend their motive. However, clarity soon emerged. This was a show reel, not a sinister scheme. They were in the process of producing a short horror film within the house and had amassed a collection of computers and editing equipment to facilitate their endeavor. The bag of money I had witnessed was merely a prop, concealed to prevent the landlord from discovering their unconventional use of the property. Overwhelmed by my own hasty conclusions, I felt a profound sense of relief and embarrassment. I had allowed my imagination to run wild without adhering to logical reasoning. My perspective shifted drastically, and I began to feel at ease. To my astonishment, they extended an incredible offer, a role in their movie. Without hesitation, I eagerly embraced the opportunity, transitioning from the fear of potential kidnapping to securing my inaugural acting role in a film. Yet, I remained perplexed about how they had identified me as an actor and located me. The attractive girl clarified that she had chanced upon my headshot online while searching for an actor for their project. Discovering the name of the college I attended, they had embarked on a quest to locate me and extend the invitation. That night, I arrived at the house prepared for a night shoot, my anticipation mounting. The filmmakers had been somewhat cryptic about the project, revealing only that it was a vampire-themed movie in which I would portray a character who had been abducted and imprisoned by vampires. The condition for receiving further information was signing a non-disclosure agreement, a common practice in the industry. Upon reaching the house, the girl who had greeted me earlier answered the door, assuring me that we would commence shooting shortly. She proceeded to apply makeup and disheveled my hair, lending authenticity to my captive character. I had yet to receive a script, which struck me as somewhat unusual. Nevertheless, I understood that such details could materialize last minute in the world of professional filmmaking. She affirmed that my attire was suitable for the upcoming scene, given that it depicted my character's captivity. In preparation, she fastened handcuffs around my wrists, which, for props, felt surprisingly snug. I welcomed the tactile authenticity, believing it would enhance my method acting. Subsequently, she escorted me to the room designated for our shoot, instructing me to sit on the floor and await the completion of lighting preparations. The room exuded an aura of neglect, its surfaces covered in dust and grime. Left alone for a while, I eventually perceived an eerie sound emanating from a closet within the room, hinting at concealed activity. My companion returned, securing my handcuffs to a metal rung on the floor before excusing herself briefly. In her absence, the curious noise from the closet persisted, piquing my curiosity. My gaze shifted towards the closet, where I discerned movement within its confines. With an abrupt swing, the closet door flung open, revealing my boss, who, to my astonishment, was also restrained by handcuffs. His expression bore an undeniable sense of fear. An instinctive impulse to scream was quickly stifled, as I realized the gravity of the situation. I couldn't afford to divulge my prior knowledge of my boss's presence. Swiftly and discreetly, I fumbled for my cell phone in my pocket, employing a single hand to dial the police and relayed in hushed tones the unfolding events. A month has passed since the harrowing incident that saw me held captive. Reflecting on it now, it seems surreal to believe that I was once a hostage. Recently, the police provided us with a comprehensive account of the events that unfolded that night. As it turned out, the perpetrators had rented the house as a hideout while carrying out their illicit activities. Proficient hackers and thieves, they had employed their technical expertise to orchestrate various cyber crimes, primarily involving embezzling money from unsuspecting victims. My boss had become suspicious of their activities, inadvertently placing himself in their crosshairs. Subsequently, they resorted to kidnapping him as well, and it was during this period of panic that I was ensnared in their scheme. Remarkably, the criminals maintained that their intention had never been to harm either my boss or me. Rather, they had initially planned to confine us within the house temporarily while they deliberated on their next move. As for the piles of money I had witnessed, they were, indeed, ill-gotten gains, stolen and genuine. Their knowledge of my background as an actor stemmed from their online research, where they came across numerous social media posts related to my acting endeavors. Returning to the routine of my college days, I continue my night shifts as a pizza delivery driver. However, my boss now treats me with markedly greater respect, under the belief that I saved his life during that fateful night. Though my dream of becoming an actor remains a distant aspiration, at least I can look forward to an upcoming TV interview where I'll recount the details of the crimes committed by these individuals, ultimately leading to their incarceration. Who knows? Perhaps one day, a movie will be made about these events, and I may even have the opportunity to portray myself in the retelling.